الحمد لله الحمد لله وحده والصلاة والسلام على من لا نبي بعده أما بعد فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إنا سخرنا الجبال معه يسبحن بالعشي والإشراق والطير محشورة كل له أواب وشددنا ملكه وآتيناه الحكمة وفصل الخطاب صدق الله مولانا العظيم رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم اللهم انفعنا بما علمتنا وعلمنا ما ينفعنا إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا ومولانا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه وأتباعه وأزواجه وذرياته إنا سخرنا الجبال معه يسبحن بالعشي والإشراق. Verily, we subjugated the mountains that would glorify Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with him by evening and at daybreak. وَالطَّيْرَ مَحْشُورَةً, we also placed the birds at his service. كُلٌّ لَهُ أَوَّابٌ, who all gathered together, they all turned towards him, meaning Allah. وَشَدَدْنَا مُلْكَهُ, we strengthened his kingdom. وَآتَيْنَاهُ الْحِكْمَةَ, and granted him wisdom. وَفَصْلَ الْخِطَابِ, and sound judgment, making him a truly great statesman. We were discussing in the last lesson the beginning of the second ruku of Surah Saad. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is making a mention of one of his great prophets, Sayyiduna Dawud alayhis salatu wassalam. And from verse number 18, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is now mentioning three favors with which Sayyiduna Dawud alayhis salatu wassalam was bestowed with. In other places in the Qur'an, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala highlights other favors and bounties which Sayyiduna Dawud alayhis salatu wassalam was bestowed with. And over here in Surah Saad, Allah Ta'ala has mentioned three favors. And from amongst them, we had begun discussing the very first one, which was that when Sayyidina Dawud alayhi salatu wassalam would engage in the dhikr and the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then he would be joined in this dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with the mountains as well as the birds. And this was a favor upon Dawud alayhi salatu wassalam due to two reasons. One reason was that when the mountains also glorified Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the birds also glorified Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, And the people could hear this glorifying of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then this became a miracle for Dawud alayhi salam. And any miracle which a prophet is bestowed with, this is a favor upon him. And a second way in which this was a favor for Dawud alayhi salatu wassalam is that sometimes when a person sits to engage in the dhikr of Allah, to remember Allah Ta'ala, likewise any other ibadah or worship, if a person is alone, sometimes it will be very difficult for him to motivate himself. But when he is part of a gathering and there are others also with him, then it's possible that this one person is not feeling too inclined towards that particular worship, but there are others in that gathering whose connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has become so strong that due to their engagement, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also blesses this one individual. And he also gains that connection. So one can imagine that when a person is engaged in the dhikr of Allah, and he also hears the mountains glorifying Allah, he also hears the birds glorifying Allah, then this made the taste of dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala even more greater and pleasurable and sweeter for Dawud alayhi salam. And it became even more easier for him to remain focused in this ibadah of remembering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So in this way it was also a favor upon Dawud alayhi salatu wassalam. And some commentators of the Qur'an here have also mentioned that Dawud alayhi salatu wassalam was blessed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with a very beautiful voice. He had a very melodious voice. So when he would recite the Zabur, which was the divine book revealed to him, and likewise when he would engage in the dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, due to his melodious voice, the birds which would be flying, they would stop in their places in order to listen to this beautiful recitation of Dawud alayhi salam. And we find Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam on one occasion when he heard one of his companions, Sayyiduna Abu Musa al-Ash'ari radiyallahu anhu, reciting the Qur'an. Then upon this, Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, Ya Aba Musa, O Abu Musa, لَقَدْ أُوتِيتَ مِزْمَارًا مِنْ مَزَامِيرِ آلِ دَاوُدِ. You have been granted a melody from the melodies of Dawud alayhi salatu wasalam. Meaning just as he had a very beautiful voice, Allah Ta'ala has also granted you a share of this beautiful voice. And you also recite the Qur'an in a very beautiful manner. And this is also a gift from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala which He bestows certain servants of His. That when they recite the glorious Qur'an, a person just wants to continue listening to his recitation. This is known as husnul sawt. So Dawud alayhi salatu wassalam was also blessed with a very beautiful voice. So this is what we had discussed in last week's lesson. Now in this verse, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is mentioning one more point which needs to be discussed, which is that when Dawud alayhi salam would glorify Allah by evening and at daybreak, bil ashiyi wal ishraq, two times have been mentioned here. As far as al-ashi is concerned, Mufti Muhammad Shafi Sahib rahmatullahi alayhi mentions that al-ashi can be used for any time after the Dhuhr Salah until the following morning. So this entire time from the time of Dhuhr in the afternoon, all the way until the following morning, this entire time can be known as Al-Ashi. Although over here it seems as though Al-Ashi is referring to the evening time or the time just after sunset, after Maghrib. And Al-Ishraq refers to the time after sunset, after sunrise in the morning. Now as far as Al-Ishraq over here is concerned, Sayyiduna Abdullah ibn Abbas radiyallahu anhuma mentions that I understood from this verse of the Qur'an when to perform Salatul Duha. Salatul Duha. Salatul Duha is an optional salah. And in the Indian subcontinent, this salah is also known as the Chasht Namaz. In Arabic, it is known as Salatul Duha. So Salatul Duha or the Chasht Namaz. Now what is this salah? Now as far as Salatul Duha is concerned, we find in the ahadith that it had three names. This salah, number one, is called Salatul Duha. Number two, it is also called Salatul Ishraq. And number three, it's called Salatul Awwabin. You have three names. Originally, this Salatul Duha was also known as the Ishraq Salah, it was also known as the Duha Salah, and it was also known as Awwabin. Now this requires some explanation. So first of all, Ishraq. In this verse Allah Ta'ala has used this word Ishraq. What is Ishraq? The Salatul Ishraq, this is this Salah which is performed approximately 15 minutes after sunrise. Approximately 15 minutes after sunrise. A person can perform either 2 rakats or 4 rakats. And Imam Tirmidhi rahmatullahi alayhi in his compilation of hadith has mentioned a virtue for this salah. The Sayyiduna Anas bin Malik radiyallahu ta'ala anhu says that the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam mentioned, whoever performs his Fajr salah, so he performs his Fajr Salah, and after performing Fajr Salah, he remains seated in his place. He doesn't get up from his place, he remains seated in his place. And he remains engaged in the dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He either reads La ilaha illallah, Allah, Allah, any form of dhikr. So he performs his Fajr Salah. After performing Fajr Salah, he remains engaged in Dhikrullah. Until when? Until approximately 15 minutes after sunrise. And 15 minutes after sunrise, now he gets up and he performs either 2 rakats or 4 rakats. What is the reward? He will gain the reward of performing 1 Hajj and 1 Umrah. So a great reward. Very great reward. We are passing through those months in which people are preparing to go for Hajj. And those who are being, or those who are intending to go, or those who want to go in the future, each person knows what a difficult task and journey this is. Be it financially, be it physically, and the times that we are going through. It's very difficult to even get the opportunity to go. So all of that effort, after a person puts in all of that effort, then he will get the reward of 1 Hajj and 1 Umrah. And over here, a person performs Fajr Salah, he remains seated in his place. And usually the Fajr Salah in the Hanafi masjids is very close to the time of sunrise. The Fajr Salah in the Hanafi masjids takes place usually during the last half an hour. So 10 minutes goes in Fajr Salah, then you have approximately 20 minutes to sunrise. So 20 minutes and then 15 minutes after sunrise. So around 35-40 minutes a person needs to remain in his place, engaged in the dhikr of Allah, reciting the Qur'an, whatever form of dhikr of Allah he wants to do. And then he stands up, performs either 2 rakats or 4 rakats, and he gains the reward of performing 1 Hajj and 1 Umrah. So if a person cannot do this daily, then he should at least set some sort of target that maybe once a week or once a month he will practice upon this, so that he can gain this reward. So this is Salatul Ishraq. Thereafter we have a second optional Salah, which is known as Salatul Duha. Salatul Duha. Regarding Salatul Duha, Imam Tirmidhi rahmatullahi alayhi has narrated the hadith in which Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam has mentioned that person who performs Salatul Duha. First of all, what is Salatul Duha? So Salatul Duha is performed when the sunshine spreads across the earth. A person in a hot country or during a summer's day, he can begin to feel the heat. So after sunrise, you don't feel heat, it's very cool outside. But approximately after 10 o'clock, this is when a person will begin to feel the heat. And this salah, from the hadith reported by Imam Haythami rahmatullahi alayhi, we learn that it was called Salatul Duha also, it was called Salatul Ishraq also. This is why Sayyiduna Abdullah ibn Abbas radiyallahu anhuma says that Hani radiyallahu anha, who is the cousin sister of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam, the very cousin sister whose house Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam was sleeping at night during the night of Mi'raj. So on one occasion, Hani radiyallahu anha says that Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam entered her house. And he entered her house, and thereafter he requested for the water of wudu. He was given the water of wudu, he performed wudu. And after performing wudu, she says, ثُمَّ صَلَّى صَلَاةَ الدُّحَى. Thereafter he performed Salatul Duha. وَقَالَ, and Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, يَا Hani, O Hani, هَذِهِ Salatul Ishraq. This is Salatul Ishraq. So from this hadith we learn that this salah was known as Salatul Duha also, it was known as Salatul Ishraq also. Because Hani radiallahu anha is saying, Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam performed Salatul Duha, and after performing Salatul Duha, Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam says that, O Hani, this is Salatul Ishraq. So from this one hadith we learn 2 names for this salah. This is why the ulama of the opinion, some say Salatul Duha and Salatul Ishraq is the same salah. There's not 2 different salah. And some say no, Salatul Ishraq is a separate salah and Salatul Duha is a separate salah. And those who say there are 2 separate salah is because of the different virtues. That one is that a person performs 2 rakats after remaining seated in his place after the Fajr salah. But if we take the time of Salatul Duha, which I will explain in a short while, or I have just explained, that is after around 10 o'clock, then a person will have to sit for a very long time. So some say, if you want to acquire the reward of Salatul Ishraq, then keep that first point in mind, that Salatul Ishraq is just 15 minutes after sunrise. And make Salatul Duha a separate salah. And some of the opinion that no, they are both the same salah. So what is Salatul Duha? Salatul Duha is when a person begins to feel the heat. And this salah, which from the hadith of Imam Haythami rahmatullahi alayhi, we learn it could be called Salatul Duha also, it could be called Salatul Ishraq also. In the narration of Imam Muslim rahmatullahi alayhi, Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam says, Salatul Awwabin Hina Tarmadul Fisal. Salatul Awwabin is when the young camels, they begin to lift up their feet due to feeling the heat on the ground. which is the same time. But in this hadith, Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam is saying this salah is called Salatul Awwabin. So now we have three names. Approximately after 10 o'clock in the hot Arabian sun, when it becomes very hot, then the young camels, they begin to jump up and down. So why do they begin to jump up and down? Because it's very hot now. So they can feel the heat. So Salatul Awwabin hina tarmadul fisal. Tarmadu, that when a person begins to feel the heat, when something begins to burn you. This is why Ramadan, this Ramada Yarmadu, Ramadan also comes from this word, that Ramadan is that month which burns away a person's sins. So this salah, Salatul Duha, it could be called Salatul Duha, it could be called Salatul Ishraq, it could also be called Salatul Awwabin. And it's performed approximately after 10 a.m. once a person begins to feel the heat. And what is the reward for this? Well, first of all, how many rakats do you perform? So, for Ishraq it was mentioned either 2 rakats or 4 rakats. For Salatul Duha, the minimum is 2 rakats and the maximum is 12 rakats. Minimum is 2 rakats, maximum is 12 rakats. And the ulama mention that each person should try and fix a prescribed amount for himself. For example, if one person feels I will be able to recite 4 rakats, then he should recite 4 rakats daily. Instead of doing this, that one day you recite 4, perform 4, another day you perform 6, another day you perform 10. A person should have a fixed amount. And whatever he feels is a good amount for himself, he should perform that many daily. And Aisha radiallahu anha says that Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam's fixed amount was 4 rakats. So although it's possible he performed between 2 and 12 also, but the majority of the times he would perform 4 rakats. So anywhere between 2 and 12, Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam's practice was to perform 4. Now what's the reward? So Imam Tirmidhi rahmatullahi alayhi has narrated the hadith that Sayyiduna Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu says that Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam mentioned that person who performs Salatul Duha with punctuality. So he makes it a practice and punctually he performs this Salatul Duha. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will forgive all of his sins, even if they may be equivalent to the froth on the ocean. Meaning no matter how many sins he has, Allah Ta'ala will forgive all of his sins if he makes it a practice to perform Salatul Duha. So this is the virtue for that person who performs Salatul Duha punctually. And Sayyiduna Anas bin Malik radiallahu anhu has narrated a hadith in which Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam mentions a virtue for that person who performs Salatul Duha and he performs 12 rakats of Salatul Duha. And what is the virtue? That person who performs 12 rakats of Salatul Duha, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will build a palace for him in paradise made out of gold. So at least once a year or once during our lifetime, we should also perform 12 rakats of Salatul Duha. And if a person was to perform 12 rakats and Allah Ta'ala has built for him a palace in paradise, then it's not going to be that Allah Ta'ala builds a palace for him in paradise and thereafter places him in the hellfire. So from this hadith we can learn that if Allah Ta'ala is going to build a palace for us in paradise, then this means Allah Ta'ala will now give us the ability to live our lives in accordance to His will, so that when we leave this world, we leave with Iman and we gain our place in paradise so that we can benefit from that palace. So this is the reward for that person who performs 12 rakats of Salatul Duha. And Imam Muslim rahmatullahi alayhi has narrated a hadith in which Sayyiduna Abu Dhar al-Ghifari radiallahu anhu mentions that the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, يُصْبِحُ عَلَى كُلِّ سُلَامَ مِنْ أَحَدِكُمْ صَدَقَةٌ. That when a person wakes up in the morning, charity is due upon every joint of his body. And in another hadith, Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam mentions that Allah Ta'ala has placed 360 joints in a person's body. And one charity is due upon each one of these joints. Now, when a person hears this, he will feel that, does this mean that I have to give charity 360 times during the day? So Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam further says in this hadith that فَكُلُّ تَسْبِيحَةٍ صَدَقَةٌ. Every time you say Subhanallah, this is one charity. So if a person was to say Subhanallah 360 times, he has paid his due for each and every joint. وَكُلُّ تَهْلِيلَةٍ صَدَقَةٌ. Every time a person says La ilaha illallah, this is also a charity. وَكُلُّ تَكْبِيرَةٍ صَدَقَةٌ. If he says Allahu Akbar, this is also a charity. Now just in namaz, a person will say Allahu Akbar so many times. So in other words, Allah Ta'ala has made it very easy for us. First of all, He has placed this on our shoulders that you have to give charity for each and every joint, 360 joints. But then Allah Ta'ala makes it very easy that what is charity? So in simple words, any good deed that you will do will be charity. فَكُلُّ تَسْبِيحَةٍ صَدَقَةٌ وَكُلُّ تَهْلِيلَةٍ صَدَقَةٌ وَكُلُّ تَكْبِيرَةٍ صَدَقَةٌ وَأَمْرٌ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ صَدَقَةٌ. If you were to enjoin good, if you were to tell someone to do something good, this is also charity. And وَنَهْيٌ عَنِ الْمُنْكَرِ صَدَقَةٌ. If you were to prevent someone from doing something wrong, this is also a charity. These are all different ways in which you can perform and carry out these charities. And thereafter Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam ends the hadith by saying, وَيُجْزِي مِنْ ذَلِكَ رَكْعَتَانِ يَرْكَعُهُمَا مِنَ الضُّحَى. That if a person was to perform 2 rakats of Salatul Duha, then by performing the 2 rakats of Salatul Duha, he has paid the charity of all 360 joints. Now there is no need for him to do anything else. So these 2 rakats of Salatul Duha will suffice for him. So this is another virtue of performing Salatul Duha. So Salatul Ishraq is after sunrise, 2 or 4 rakats, and Salatul Duha is after the heat can be felt on the earth between 2 and 12 rakats. Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam's practice was to perform 4 rakats. And finally Salatul Awwabin. That Salatul Awwabin now in our times is usually that salah which is performed after the Maghrib salah. And this is 6 rakats. 6 rakats optional after Maghrib. Now, there are 3 ways a person can practice upon Salatul Awwabin. The first one is that after Maghrib salah, a person performs 2 rakats sunnah muakkada, which he has to perform anyway. And after 2 rakats sunnah muakkada, there are 2 rakats nafil. So he performs 2 rakats sunnah muakkada, he performs his 2 rakats nafil. And he tells himself that I've already performed 4 rakats, let me perform 2 more rakats so that I've performed 6 rakats after Maghrib, and this is Salatul Awwabin. So this is the first level. That you're performing your 2 rakats salah, your 2 rakats sunnah muakkada and your 2 rakats nafil anyway, just add 2 more rakats, make it 6 rakats. And thereafter the second level is that you perform your 2 rakats sunnah muakkada, and thereafter when you perform your 2 rakats nafil, this you intend to be your first 2 rakats of Salatul Awwabin. So now you will perform another 4 rakats optional with the intention of Salatul Awwabin, and you have now performed 6 rakats Salatul Awwabin. And the third level is 2 rakats sunnah muakkada and 2 rakats nafil, which you already perform, and thereafter 6 rakats of Salatul Awwabin. And the reward of performing Salatul Awwabin is, Sayyidina Abu Hurairah radiyallahu anhu narrates that Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam mentioned that a person who after performing Maghrib Salah, he performs 6 rakat Salatul Awwabin without indulging in any worldly affairs, then this is equal to 12 years of Nafal optional Salah. So he will gain the reward of performing optional Salah for 12 years. So one could even keep this in mind for lazy people like me, that a person performs Salatul Awwabin today and thereafter he feels now for the next 12 years I'm okay. And then after 12 years you perform Salatul Awwabin again. But this is, if a person can perform it regularly, this would be better. If not regularly, then as many times as possible. So we have the virtues for Salatul Ishraq also, Salatul Duha also, Salatul Awwabin also. We should try to perform these Salah. If not all the times, then whenever we are able to take out time, we should perform this Salah. And it's important that we keep these Salah and their virtues in mind, so that whenever we do have the opportunity, for example, a person is sat in i'tikaf in the month of Ramadan. Now he's in the masjid anyway. So many a times a person is in i'tikaf but he doesn't know what to do in this time. But this is why knowledge is so important, that if he had knowledge of this, then he would have known what to do in the masjid. A person goes away for Hajj or Umrah. Now he's in the masjid for hours upon hours, because that's what you're going there for ibadah. So from the time of Fajr till Dhuhr, he sat in the masjid, but he doesn't know what to do. So if he knew about this, then he could have performed these Salah and gained these rewards. So these are Salatul Duha, Salatul Ishraq and Salatul Awwabin. Sayyiduna Abdullah ibn Abbas radiallahu anhuma says that it's from this verse that I understood what Salatul Duha is. And his student Imam Ikrimah rahmatullahi alayhi used to say that first Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhuma, he didn't used to perform, be it Salatul Ishraq or Salatul Duha. But after coming across this verse, then Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhuma understood Salatul Duha, and he also began to perform Salatul Duha. So just as Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhuma, after coming across this verse, he brought this practice into his life, we make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that now that He has brought us to this verse also, and He has made us understand Salatul Duha, may Allah ta'ala also bring this Salah into our lives and into the lives of all those who are listening, as well as our family members and the entire Ummah. وَشَدَدْنَا مُلْكَهُ وَآتَيْنَاهُ الْحِكْمَةَ وَفَصْلَ الْخِطَابِ. وَشَدَدْنَا مُلْكَهُ. This is the second favor which Dawud alayhi salatu wassalam was bestowed with, which is that we strengthened his kingdom. We granted Dawud alayhi salam a very strong kingdom, a very powerful kingdom, and a stable kingdom. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had placed great prestige and awe in Dawud alayhi salam. This awe, which is known as Rab in the Arabic language. That some leaders, Allah ta'ala, He bestows them and blesses them with awe. So when the leader has awe, then his subjects and his followers, they will respect him also, and before doing anything out of place, they will think 100 times. They will have that fear in them, that we cannot do something contrary to the will of our leader. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam was also granted this awe. He himself says that utitu bir-ra'b, that I have been granted ra'b and awe by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And how was this awe? This awe was such that the Sahaba radiallahu anhum ajma'in and the companions, they felt it. But not only did the companions feel the awe, even the enemies felt this awe. To this extent, the Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam says that if the enemy was at a distance of 2 months, so in those days, how long would it take to travel for 2 months? How far would that distance be? A person is so far that it would take him 2 months to get to Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam. But at that distance, if they heard of the name of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam, then they would become fearful. This was the awe which Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam was granted. So Dawud alayhi salatu wassalam was also granted this awe. On the occasion when Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam passed away, then Sayyiduna Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, he had left to visit his wife. What had happened is Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam was ill for many days. But that particular morning, in which Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam departed from this world, it felt as though his health was improving. So Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, who was always with the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam, and because Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam had been ill for many days, he had not gone to visit his wife, who was approximately 2-3 miles away from where Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam was. So he saw that the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam's health is improving. So let me go and visit my wife, and thereafter I will return. Now Abu Bakr radiyallahu anhu goes to visit his wife, and over here Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam breathes his last and passes away. Now in those days, to get the message across that the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam has passed away, and Abu Bakr radiyallahu anhu is going to be the next Khalifa and the next leader, for him to return back, this was going to take time. And one can imagine it was a moment of great emotions, that the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alayhi wasallam has passed away. And the munafiqeen and the hypocrites, this could have been an occasion where they could have taken advantage of this situation. That the Prophet of Allah has passed away, Abu Bakr is not present also, let us try and cause some sort of corruption between the Muslims. So on that occasion, Hazrat Umar radiyallahu ta'ala anhu stood up with his sword. And he gave a sermon, and in the sermon he said that if anybody was to say that the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam has passed away, then I will sever his head from his body. Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam has not passed away. He has gone to meet Allah Ta'ala just as Musa alayhi salam went to meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And after meeting Allah, just as Musa alayhi salam returned, Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam is also going to return. Now Umar radiallahu anhu also had that awe. So due to his awe, each and every munafiq and hypocrite thought to himself that if this is what Umar is saying, there's a possibility that there is truth in them. Who is going to go inside and look that has the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam truly passed away or not? So everybody sat quietly. Nobody moved. So the muhaddithin mentioned that why Allah Ta'ala made Umar radiallahu anhu say these words is for this very reason, so that the munafiqeen, they cannot cause corruption. And thereafter when Abu Bakr radiallahu ta'ala anhu came, first of all Abu Bakr radiallahu ta'ala anhu went inside and he removed the cloth from the face of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam. And he kissed Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, and thereafter he said, Tibta hayyan wa mayyitan. And O Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, you are very pure during your lifetime also, and now that you have passed away, you are equally pure. And thereafter Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu came into the masjid. And he told Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu that, oh Umar, you stop what you are doing and what you are saying. But Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu did not listen. So Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu went into another corner of the masjid. Now as soon as Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu went into this corner of the masjid and he stood up to deliver his sermon, the entire gathering turned towards Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu. So Umar radiallahu anhu saw that everyone has now turned towards Abu Bakr, so even Umar radiallahu anhu stopped. And then Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu delivered his sermon. And through his sermon he made it clear that man kana ya'budu Muhammadan fa inna Muhammadan qad mat. That whoever worshipped Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, then let him know that Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam has passed away. Now it was clear that Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam has passed away. وَمَنْ كَانَ يَعْبُدُ اللَّهَ فَإِنَّ اللَّهَ حَيٌّ لَا يَمُوتُ. And whoever worship Allah Ta'ala, then he should remember that Allah is alive, he is never going to die. And then he recited the verse of the Qur'an that وَمَا مُحَمَّدٌ إِلَّا رَسُولٌ قَدْ خَلَتْ مِنْ قَبْلِهِ الرُّسُلُ. Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam was not but a prophet, and many prophets have passed before. So just as they came in the world and they left, Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam also came in the world and he has also left. Umar radiallahu anhu says that when I heard this sermon, then it became clear that yes, Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam has passed away. And he would also say that when Abu Bakr recited this verse in this khutbah, it felt as though this verse was being revealed at that very moment. So anyway, I was mentioning regarding Dawud alayhi salatu was salam, that Allah Ta'ala had granted him also this great prestige, this great awe. He had a very powerful, stable kingdom. So وَشَدَدْنَا مُلْكَهُ. Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhuma used to say that during the night time, Dawud alayhi salatu was salam, when he would be inside his palace, then there would be 36,000 soldiers surrounding his palace. One can understand what sort of a kingdom Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had granted him. That he had 36,000 soldiers surrounding his palace at night. And in the morning, Dawud alayhi salatu was salam would say to them, "Irji'u faqad radiya ankum nabiyullah." Then all of you now return back to your homes. Indeed, the Prophet of Allah is pleased with you. But this was the kingdom which Dawud alayhi salatu was salam had been granted. وَشَدَدْنَا مُلْكَهُ وَآتَيْنَاهُ الْحِكْمَةَ. And Allah Ta'ala further says that we granted him hikmah. We granted Dawud alayhi salam hikmah. Imam Suddi rahmatullahi alayhi says al-hikmah here refers to nubuwah, prophethood. So وَآتَيْنَاهُ الْحِكْمَةِ means وَآتَيْنَاهُ النُّبُوَّةِ, we granted Dawud alayhi salam prophethood. Imam Mujahid rahmatullahi alayhi says al-hikmah here refers to al-adl, justice, that he ruled with justice. He was a very just ruler. And Abu al-Aliya says al-hikmah here refers to al-ilmu bi kitabillahi ta'ala, that we granted him the knowledge of the kitab of Allah, the book of Allah. He had the knowledge of Zabur. And Imam Shuraih rahmatullahi alayhi says that it refers to al-ilm and al-fiqh. We granted him knowledge also, and we granted him a deep understanding of the deen. يُؤْتِ الْحِكْمَةَ مَنْ يَشَاءُ. Allah Ta'ala says in the Qur'an that he grants hikmah to whomsoever he wishes. So what is hikmah? We translate hikmah as wisdom. Hikmah means that a person knows what to do and when to do. This is hikmah. One is you just possess knowledge. But how do you utilize that knowledge? What do you have to do in a particular situation? This is called hikmah. For example, Imam Abu Yusuf rahmatullahi alayhi was once traveling with his ustad, his teacher, Imam Abu Hanifa rahmatullahi alayhi. And during the journey, it was time for salah. So Imam Abu Yusuf rahmatullahi alayhi, he led the salah, and he led the salah very quickly. And he performed very small surahs. So upon this, Imam Abu Hanifa rahmatullahi alayhi remarked and said, Sara Abu Yusuf faqihan. Abu Yusuf has become a faqih. He has been granted faqaha, the deep understanding of deen. Meaning that he knew that at this moment in time we are traveling, and the circumstances are such that this is not the time to prolong your salah. This is the difference between a normal abid and a normal worshipper and one who possesses the correct knowledge of deen. A normal worshipper, if he was traveling with his teacher, then he may have made this blunder and mistake that I'm with the great sheikh, let me pray a very long salah, so he becomes hafiz. Some people do this. So this is wrong, that you don't know when to perform long salah and when to perform short salah. Look, Imam Abu Yusuf rahmatullahi alayhi knew. So what to do, when to do, how to do it. This is a deep understanding of deen. It's not that just because a certain act is very meritorious or very virtuous, then it's always going to be meritorious or virtuous, or it's going to be meritorious and virtuous for each and every individual. A Sahabi came to Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam and said, Ujahidu fi sabilillah. O Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam, it's my desire that I go out in the path of Allah and I fight in the path of Allah. Now a great virtue that you go out, fight in the path of Allah, and it's possible you will give your life also. Did Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam say, yes, very good, go ahead? No. Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, Alaka abawan, do you have any parents? So he said, yes, my parents are alive. Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam replied, Fafihi ma fajahid. Your jihad is you go home and you serve your parents. So this shows that you have to know what to do, when to do. A person may feel that for me this is going to be more virtuous. But no, when a person is granted hikmah, and who is granted hikmah? وَمَنْ يُؤْتَ الْحِكْمَةَ فَقَدْ أُوتِيَ خَيْرًا كَثِيرًا. Allah Ta'ala gives hikmah to whomsoever He wishes, and whoever has been granted hikmah, he has been granted a great amount of goodness, abundance of goodness. So Dawud alayhi salam was also granted hikmah. And finally, وَفَصْلَ الْخِطَابِ. وَفَصْلَ الْخِطَابِ. Allama Qurtubi rahmatullahi alayhi has mentioned one tafsir of Faslul Khitab is Al-Faslu fil Qada. Dawud alayhi salam had the ability to make the correct decision whenever a case was presented before him. So if two parties came with a case, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had granted him this ability that he would be able to make the correct decision that who is innocent and who is guilty. This is one meaning of Faslul Khitab. He had the ability to make the correct decision. And a second, this is according to Abu Abdul Rahman as-Sulami rahmatullahi alayhi. Abdullah ibn Abbas radiyallahu anhuma mentions, Faslul Khitab refers to Bayanul Kalam, meaning Dawud alayhi salatu was salam, he was a very profound and powerful orator. He was a powerful speaker. So he would be able to deliver talks and speeches in such a way which would be very effective. So Allah Ta'ala had granted him this ability to speak in such a way that his speech would be effective. And this is also a great bounty of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that if a person is able to speak with regards to the deen, and through his speeches he is able to make people practice upon the deen. This is also a great gift from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as long as he does it with the correct intention, and he, in his speeches, he ensures that he says that which is correct. So Dawud alayhi salatu wasalam was also granted this ability, that he was a powerful speaker. And some commentators of the Quran have also mentioned a third tafsir here, which is that وَهُوَ قَوْلُهُ أَمَّا بَعْدُ وَهُوَ أَوَّلُ مَنْ تَكَلَّمَ بِهَا. That when we usually hear the khutbah, or before a person begins his speech, then after praising Allah Ta'ala and sending salutations upon Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, the person says أَمَّا بَعْدُ Alhamdulillahi wahda wassalatu wassalamu ala man la nabiyya ba'da amma ba'd. So some commentators of the Quran mention that Faslul Khitab here refers to Dawud alayhi salatu wassalam. He was the very first person who said this amma ba'd. And after Dawud alayhi salam, every other speaker, every other scholar, when he would begin his speech, he would praise Allah. After praising Allah, he would send salutations upon the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and thereafter he would say this amma ba'd. Amma ba'd simply means that after praising Allah and sending salutations upon Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, now I am about to begin the actual speech. So the first person to say amma ba'd was Dawud alayhi salam. And Allama Qurtubi rahmatullahi alayhi thereafter writes that although this is the opinion of some ulama that Dawud alayhi salam was the first one to say amma ba'd, but we also find regarding a companion of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam who was known as Suhban bin Wa'il. So this Suhban bin Wa'il radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, when we study his life story, we find some of his qualities. That one is that أَوَّلُ مَنْ قَالَهَا فِي الْجَاهِلِيَّةِ. He was the first person to say amma ba'd during the days of ignorance. But obviously Dawud alayhi salatu wasalam came way before the companions. So the easy answer to this would be that Dawud alayhi salam was the first one to say Amma Ba'd, and Suhban bin Wa'il was the first one to say Amma Ba'd either in this ummah or during the days of ignorance. Likewise, he was also awwalu man tawakka'a ala asa. He was the first one to lean on a asa, on a staff. Sometimes you see the imam on the mimbar, on the pulpit, that they have a staff in their hand when they are delivering a sermon. So, according to some, the first companion or the first man during the days of ignorance who carried out this practice was this Suhban bin Wa'il radiyallahu anhu. And he was also awwalu man amana bil ba'thi, the first person who accepted and brought iman upon life after death during the days of ignorance. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had blessed him with certain qualities. For example, he would deliver consecutive lectures for a very long time. So he had this ability to deliver long lectures, and he would go on one after another. He would deliver one lecture, finish, thereafter a second one, thereafter a third one. This was something which he used to do. And likewise, when he would deliver his lecture, Allah Ta'ala had granted him such an ability to speak that he wouldn't even pause once throughout the entire lecture. He would just speak non-stop. And another quality which Allah Ta'ala had bestowed him with was that he was so profound in his speech that in his entire speech he would not use the same word twice. So if he's used one word, now for the rest of the speech he will not use that word again. One can understand how profound he must have been in his speech. And Allah Ta'ala had also blessed him with a very long life. He lived for mi'atu wa thamanina sana, 180 years. So Allah Ta'ala had blessed him with a lifespan of 180 years. Now this is also a quality which Allah Ta'ala blesses certain individuals with in order to preserve the deen. That when they speak, then Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala grants them the ability to deliver talks which are effective. The likes of Hazrat Shah Ta'ala Bukhari rahmatullahi alayhi comes to mind, that he himself used to say that I have spent half of my life traveling and half of my life in the jail. He would say in the Urdu language that Adi Zindagi Rail mein guzri or Adi Zindagi Jail mein guzri. So rail and jail. So rail meaning on the train track, meaning traveling, and jail means prison. So Adi Zindagi Rail mein guzri, Adi Zindagi Jail mein guzri. What does this mean? That Hazrat Shah Ta'ala Bukhari rahmatullahi alayhi, one of our recent scholars he is, from the Indian subcontinent. So he used to deliver talks, but he would never shy away from speaking the truth. And to speak with regards to Islam in India during that time, maybe we are heading towards that direction again today. So in that time, if a person spoke about Islam, then this would be a crime. But somebody had to speak about Islam. So he would deliver his talks, and when he would deliver a talk, then he would be imprisoned. Sometimes 1 year, sometimes 2 years, whatever the sentence was. Now as soon as he would come out, again he would begin delivering talks. So this Adi Zindagi Rail mein guzri means that I've spent half my life traveling, meaning I would travel from one city to another, one village to another to deliver talks. And whenever I would deliver talks, because I would speak the haqq and the truth, then I would be in prison. So half of my life has gone in prison. On one occasion he was in prison, and while he was in prison, he was informed that his father is extremely ill. It so happened that after some time, when he was released from prison, the people who came to pick him up, they said to him that there is a great test in one of the places, and thousands of people are turning away from Islam. So we need you to go there, and we need you to deliver a talk there. Because it's only your talk that is going to stop these people from turning away from Islam. And those who have already turned away, it's only your talk that will bring them back onto Islam. So Shah Ta'ala Bukhari rahmatullahi alayhi said to them that I've just come out of prison, and I heard in prison that my father is extremely ill. Let me go and visit my father first, and thereafter we will go and deliver the talk. So they said, you can do this if you want, but what if in that time, those 15-20 minutes, what if even one person was to turn away from Islam? How will you answer Allah Ta'ala on the day of Qiyamah? So he said, fine, place my bag inside the car and let's go. And they went. And they went to that place and there were thousands of people there. When they would hear that Shawwal Bukhari rahmatullahi is going to deliver a talk, thousands of people would come to listen to his talk, because of the effective way in which he would deliver his talks. This is why on one occasion he would begin his talks after the Isha Salah. After Isha Salah, when it's our bedtime, this is when he would deliver his talk. And the first thing he would do when he would sit on the chair is for approximately 45 minutes he would recite the Qur'an. Our talk is approximately 45 minutes. He would just recite the Qur'an for 45 minutes in the beginning. But such would be the effective of the recitation of the Qur'an that there would be complete pin drop silence. And thousands of individuals, and each person would listen to that recitation and they would gain a great effect from just the recitation of the Qur'an. And on one occasion, some leaders from the Hindus, one very great leader, the Viceroy of India, so he came with his wife. Somebody had told him that this person delivers very amazing talks. So he came with his wife to listen. So Shawwal Bukhari rahmatullahi was informed that the Viceroy of India has come with his wife today. So Shawwal Bukhari rahmatullahi before reciting the Quran, as he would normally do, he said, I am very happy today that the Viceroy of India has come today with his wife. Let me just say one thing, that if by the end of the talk they do not embrace Islam, then my name is no longer Shawwal Bukhari. This is how much confidence he had that after my talk they will definitely accept Islam. So he said to his wife that before he even begins his talk, let's stand up from here and leave. Because if he does deliver the talk, just this one statement has had such an effect on me that we will definitely end up accepting Islam. This was how effective his speeches were. So he would recite the Quran for approximately 45 minutes first, and thereafter he would begin his talk, and he would talk for hours and hours. Even on this occasion, when he came out of prison and he was told that many people are turning away from Islam, he went. Now, the government, they also became aware of this, that such a large gathering, and Shawwal Bukhari rahmatullahi is going to deliver the talk. But once he would begin the talk, nobody could stop him. So he delivered the talk. As soon as he delivered this talk, every individual who had turned away from Islam, they once again accepted Islam. And due to this talk, he was once again sent back into prison. But this was the istiqamat and the steadfastness of our akabirin and our elders, that they never stopped and they never gave up. They did everything for the akhirah and for the hereafter. Just look at the sacrifices they made for the deen and for the religion. So anyway, وَفَصْلَ الْخِطَابِ, under this Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala granted us the ability to say something extra also. But these are some qualities, some favors which Dawud alayhi salatu was salam was favored with, that وَشَدَدْنَا مُلْكَهُ وَآتَيْنَاهُ الْحِكْمَةَ and وَفَصْلَ الْخِطَابِ. We make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He grants us all the ability to practice upon whatever we have learned today. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also make us from those individuals who serve His deen and who become from those who are the ambassadors of Islam and a means of our entry into paradise also, and the means of others entering into paradise also. وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه.